Your book is an epic fantasy. How did you come to create such a detailed world for your story?
Well, I suppose in a sense I modelled it in the way in which both people like Tolkien and Terry Pratchett developed their particular worlds. And anybody familiar with their particular work will know that consistency is the most important aspect. You must develop a world which is believable, that's credible. Even though it's a fantasy, it has to be something which people can actually believe in.
Okay. In the book Joinings, which is the first of A Seared Sky series, the trilogy, you've got a very large number of characters. How many have you got?
93.
93 characters, and every one of them is a very, very colourful character and very well drawn, so congratulations on that. You've done a really good job.
Thank you.
How do you go about creating such people, such a large cast, and how on earth do you keep track of them all?
Well, I draw my characters from experience from life and from movies, from plays, from other people's books. They're an amalgam. They're never an individual person. I don't want to get sued. They all will, of course, inevitably carry a little bit of me inside them as well, which is a slightly worrying thing. Multiple personality disorder. As to how I keep contact, a control of where they all are and know what they're doing, I developed a spreadsheet, which was the easiest way of dealing with it. Days of action across the top, character names down the side, hyperlinks with each name to their character sketch in a file. You know.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. So the character sketches, how do you go about putting those together? Do you create those first, or do the characters kind of evolve as the story evolves?
No, I start with a character sketch for each individual, and I start that by using a photograph or a picture which I've borrowed. I've got about 2,500 of them in a file, both genders and all nationalities, and I use these as a basis because I'm very visually based, and I describe the person using the features that belong to that particular photograph, and I then develop the personality according to what that person feels like to me. I then develop a history for them, determine what sort of politics they would have, what sort of ethics they would have, those sort of features, so that I have an idea of what their priorities in life are, what their ambitions are, and those sort of things.
Wonderful. Do you ever find yourself in a position where you've been kind of writing away at a character and suddenly realise that they couldn't possibly be there, or a lot of writers do tend to go around in loops, especially the more emotional and impulsive writers like yourself, because I know that you're not a grand planner of the whole story. You won't know every element when you begin. You like it to evolve quite organically. Do you ever find yourself tied in knots?
Occasionally you do find yourself backed into a dark alley. But that's part of the challenge, it's part of the fun. It means that you then have to find a way to get yourself out of this situation. The coward's way is to kill the character, but I don't want to do that in most cases. So I find something else. There's always something that you can invent to get somebody out of a dire situation.
I think that's wonderful, and I think we've also answered the question there of why you've got 93 characters, because you refuse to kill any of them.
Not any of them.
No spoilers, please.
I'm not going to give anything away.
Okay, Stuart, the book, as we've mentioned, is the first of a trilogy, and as a single volume it is quite lengthy. It comes in at about 200,000 words. How do you maintain control of the story elements over such a large number of chapters?
I use the spreadsheet and basically use the cells that are in the spreadsheet, and I record each event under each person's name on any given day, so that I can, at a glance, I can tell where everybody is at any particular time. That way it avoids me falling into the trap of having John speak to Fred when they're 3,000 miles apart. Mind you, none of the characters are called John or Fred, but...
Yeah, a little bit about the names actually. The names are really interesting, and I believe they're entirely made up by you. How do you go about making up these names? Is there any rules you throw in, or do you just pluck them out of the air?
The names are created in the same way as the names were for the places on the map. In other words, I looked to see what letters of the alphabet are most in use, and then tried to avoid those and use the ones that are least used. Obviously that causes all sorts of problems, but there are ways around that. I then run all the names through a Google search, because it is not uncommon for people to make up names and then discover that your hero is actually, the name means something like bald matron in Czech or something of that nature. So you want to try and avoid that sort of thing. So that's what I do with them.
That's excellent. That's it. Yeah, you've got to be very careful. Now, behind you at the moment, you've got this wonderful map scrolling away,
Indeed,
which
yes.
you know is the world in which your wonderful trilogy is set.
Yes.
I gather you created that yourself. That's your own hand's work. Is that
Yeah.
right? Would you like to tell us a little bit about the creation of the map and why you decided to do it yourself?
Yes, I drew it on sugar paper, a piece of A1 rather, using drawing pens with different size nibs, because I needed different features to be darker than others. The actual geographic layout of the map is to some extent stolen from the Earth itself. Anybody who looks at a globe or an atlas will probably be able to identify the region of the Earth that I got it from. I have, of course, modified it, but I wanted it to be as close as possible to a real place as I could possibly get it. I don't want to have mountains growing in the middle of places where they wouldn't normally be. I don't want rivers running uphill, those sort of things. So I used a proper geographic template to actually design the map.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, thanks very much, and I really appreciate you joining us, and I hope everyone's happy with a little insight into your writing.
Well, I hope so too, and I hope they all read the book.